the St. John City Growth Committee for Thursday, August 21st. I'll start by calling the meeting to order and ask for a motion to approve the minutes of June, please. Barry, on the question, all in favor? Perfect, thank you. I now get a motion to approve the agenda, please. Brent, on the question, all in favor? Thank you very much. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Not seeing any. We'll move on to item 6, and I'll ask you, Mr. McKeel, to introduce first, please.
Thank you, Chair McKenzie. Joining us today are Jeff Sear, Executive Director of Real Estate and Industrial Development, and I don't see Andrew Beckett here. Jody Clifford, also with Envision St. John. Together, they'll provide an update on the agency's role and scope in driving real estate development and industrial investment across the city of St. John.
Welcome, Jeff.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the Growth Committee for having me here today. The intent is really just to provide a little bit of an overview of what our service areas do in both real estate development and the industrial development service at Envision St. John. I do have members of my team here today. I've got Jody Clifford, who's my manager of real estate, as well as Walter Furness, who's our investment attraction coordinator, as well as works on general and industrial development sector development work and project. Oh, you're going to switch for me? Okay, to the next one. So I'm going to start with the here, 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so you click for me. Okay, so I'm just going to start with what the real estate is and why we have it. So we really started ramping up the real estate support service in 2023, in response to the housing crisis, as well as identifying that growth housing was going to be the bottleneck to growth for the region. We hired Jody late 2023 as we started to build that service, and I'll kind of walk you through what exactly we do. Next slide. So I'm going to walk through the process, going from pre-develop. Oh no, back one. Through pre-development, the approvals, development, sales, and occupancy. Just briefly describe some of the activities we do. So starting with pre-development with the site, we really work to not just identify sites within the private market that may not be out there and try and activate it, but to work with partners, if you switch slides, which includes doing things like, we've got a program called our site activation program, where we build out a list of privately owned sites, engage the property owners, see if there's a case to get it to the market, and see if we can get it in the hands of people who will do development. We work with the provincial as well as our municipal partners across the region, see if we can leverage municipally owned land and provincially owned land to support development projects. We've engaged religious institutions to see if we can carve off underutilized properties to support for development, and in particular this one, affordable housing development projects is usually what the conversation is about. And trying to engage corporate landholders who may own a lot of land to see if there might be mutual interest in exploring both residential and possibly commercial development. Next slide. Next step is really working with developers on the idea of a project. So if you jump to the next slide, often what this means is trying to understand market. A lot of developers in the St. John community, they got into this because they did one thing. Like they might be a builder, or they might work in finance. So there's a lot of developers that may not have the background in economic, financial analysis, market analysis. So we try to make sure that we maintain good information and good data. We've done a residential market study to project different scenarios of how the housing market might grow in the St. John region. And we work to monitor that and understand where we're at. And the last thing is, we try to inspire at times a little bit. And that even includes doing things like really, really rough concepts. So we find a site, we think it's a good site, we want to talk to the owner about doing something. He didn't think of it as an opportunity. Can we mock it up with a quick site sketch or a rendering that we can do quickly to get them talking about something more ambitious for the property? Next up, feasibility. This is one back in the days of develop St. John, we didn't do as much. In recent years, we find this is becoming a much more prominent thing that a lot of developers are looking for, especially newer ones, and that's understanding the financial system. So if you can jump to the next one. So what we do is we'll help a lot of developers wayfinding affordable housing programs. Quite often, before really the war in Ukraine and the inflation challenges, some developers would do projects without affordable housing programs. Now, none of that works, especially on the rental side. So there's a lot of new programs and new systems for people to learn, and a lot of government programs for new people entering the development system. So we try and help people wayfind with that. We try and advise on how the system works and connect people with partners that can help them get their financing. And then early on in projects, we've got some quantitative models that we've built that we kind of use as early, more sophisticated versions of the back of the napkin or the back of the envelope numbers to help people understand projects and be thinking a little bit more critically about it early on. Next slide. So again, approvals package. This is where projects are starting to get ready to come to you guys. Next slide. We'll work with developers and we'll also work with municipalities. So on the one hand, sometimes we'll work with the developers and try and see if we can give them suggestions that will make their projects a little bit more palatable when they hit the municipality and the municipal planning service. And this is an example of one really simple example where someone came to us before we went to planning and they had uptown parking in the front and said, that's probably a no-go. Let's start with exploring it in the back. But then the other thing we do is sometimes where we're working with a project and there might be something that's not a perfect fit with the bylaws, but there's maybe a good technical or financial reason, we'll try and help explain why to folks, municipalities, and see if we can help find compromises in between. Next slide. Public approvals process. So this is where you see Jody or myself sometimes coming to council and speaking in favor of projects. It's one where we try and get out as often as we can. Generally speaking, it's usually for when we have a specific client that we've worked with that requests us, or if we get a request from the city that this one might need a little help. Can you engage this person if they're interested? Not everyone wants to work with us or needs to work with us, better say, because they may have things under control and it may be an easy project for them. So we don't end up speaking for everyone, but our goal is to try and work with the good projects that might need it. Next slide. Then during the development process, our role is largely finished there, but from time to time an issue comes up and we try and support or help them. But also we want to keep the lines of communication open so that we can talk to them about their next project. So kind of finish up the real estate part of the presentation. Last year, 2024, we had a little over 7,100 units and about $2 billion worth of development in our St. John region pipeline. Not all those projects are going to happen. Not all those projects are going to happen at once. For us, what we need to do is we need to make sure we have a very large pipeline of projects that we're working on so that we can feel if a small portion of them are able to get across the line in an individual year, that our municipal shareholders are getting good value. Next slide. So I'm going to move to the industrial development service, which is the other core service that we've got that kind of walk through as well. And jump to the next slide. So why an industrial development service at Envision St. John? Next. First and foremost, this is not a new slide. We've presented this before, but the industrial sector is an important part of our economic base. It's almost 50% of our economic base, which really drives, basically the overall economy of the St. John region. And it's also an important sector for this city and this region in growing our population and growing our job base in the future. Next slide. So this map shows a large number of assets. These are not all industrial facilities, but assets in the region that are valuable or interesting to industrial users. And whenever we show this to someone in the sector, they're usually pretty impressed. And St. John's got some strength in this sector, and we can leverage this to try and grow what we have and to bring in new businesses. Next slide, please. And there's opportunities right now. There's a trend of reshoring and friendshoring. So that's businesses moving back to North America, usually more so in the higher skill, more technical industries. There's the energy transition to get to net zero, to become carbon neutral globally. Like almost all of our products and systems need to be done differently and reinvested in. It means new plants, new facilities. There's a lot of investment happening in the near horizon that we can try and attract to St. John. Industrial land scarcity, good large parcels are hard to find, especially with all the logistics and infrastructure. We've got great supply chain. And the other thing that's not on this slide is the emergence of AI and the need for data centers. It's a huge opportunity for the St. John region, and it's one that we're actually very competitive in. So in terms of what our service does, jump to the next slide, there's some overlap here. So there's a few different organizations doing different things that all kind of connect. So what I would say, the red circle is Opportunities New Brunswick and Invest Canada. This is the external sales team. It's the federal government, it's the provincial government. We've got people going to different parts of the world, talking to companies and trying to bring them here. And so they're really the frontline sales for larger scale investment attraction. We've got St. John Industrial Parks, which is the city's industrial park development organization. So their job is acquiring land, developing out infrastructure for parks, and then selling that land and supporting their customers through the sales. And then what our role really is largely, it's our job to kind of work to understand the sector, work to understand where the opportunities are and what we need to do to bring businesses in. So it can be understanding things like supply chain, local players, inputs, outputs from different industrial businesses and facilities, and understanding why that might be attractive to this sector or that sector. And then using that to build our value proposition for why businesses should come here and make sure that the right people, which is our sales teams at OMB and Invest Canada, have the right information, are talking to the right people. So we've got to be the experts on why St. John for industrial businesses, and make sure that companies abroad are hearing the right things from the sales teams. So in terms of our lines of work, we right now have 3 core focuses in industrial development. First one is investment attraction. Second one is convening the energy sector. And the third one is industrial sector development itself. Next slide. So in investment attraction, again, we're working with Opportunities New Brunswick and Invest Canada to make sure all of their team members know why St. John is a good place to invest and what for, so that when opportunities come to them or when they go to opportunities, they know what to tell them and they know that we need to be pitched. We also help build the sales materials. We act as boots on the ground in addition to St. John Industrial. Some things they'll help with, some things St. John Industrial will help with. And then we're also a gap filler. So St. John Industrial has their own parks. Sometimes their parks might not have the infrastructure that a certain opportunity needs. Maybe it needs rail, maybe it needs something else that they don't have in Spruce Lake. Maybe they need an existing facility and not just a piece of land. So usually that's where we'll pick up and help fill the gaps to try and land some of these opportunities. The last thing we do is we take a lead on coordinating with local industry partners. So we've got to be out talking to businesses, understanding what they do. So if something they have or that they build or one of their byproducts could benefit someone coming to town, that we know about it and that we can make those connections. A new thing that we really started launching this year is a more a stronger emphasis on engaging the energy sector. So we're in the process of standing up what we're calling an advisory panel and a working group on the energy sector. We held a large event in April, bringing together about 60 stakeholders to help start to map out what this could look like. So we expect to pull together kind of an advisory panel and start launching projects and initiatives kind of later this year to help support the sector. Next slide. And just really the last one is the industrial sector development. This is really about building intelligence, building understanding, and making sure that we're prepared for specific sectors, for specific opportunities. So I'd use the example of we're seeing interest in the food sector today. We've had that large Americold facility that the Port of St. John has attracted. Well, now that we have that, are there other types of food manufacturing industries that might actually make sense in St. John? What would they be and why do they make sense? Usually in food sector, businesses want to be close to the market and they want to be close to where food's grown. So that's not usually us, which is why we don't have a massive food manufacturing base, but we're an import-export hub now. So what are the niche areas of food manufacturing where we can start working with our partners to explore business attraction with? That's just an example. We'll also be looking at things like the defense sector and things like that are becoming more prominent, especially as circumstances change with global tariffs and changing global supply chains and trading relationships. Next slide. So just a few specific examples. I'll jump through these really quickly. We can't actually get into real examples, but what we're seeing. So this has been an area where there has been a lot of activity increasing. We had 24 investment attraction leads in 2024. And a number of those leads are continuing to be worked by our partners at St. John Industrial now as they mature. To put it in context, I would say we probably had maybe an average of 1 or 2 a year in 2022 and 2023. So this is an area that's gone from pretty minimal to very hot in terms of interest. It's a really big swing and miss kind of sector. A lot of these are very large projects, but if you get one across the line, it's going to be a big impact and big payoff for the municipality. So this is an area where we're very excited about what's happening and what's continuing to happen. Next slide. So again, some examples, what we've seen battery supply chain, there's a lot of transportation logistics, hydrogen production, data centers, warehousing, in general, manufacturing, as well as green steel are things that have come through the door. And even now we're starting to see more food manufacturing. We've been revamping our marketing materials for the region. So we've often had marketing materials, but what we're doing right now with the St. John region is we're trying to get laser focused. We're trying to understand what sectors we make sense for, and then finding key differentiators, and sometimes very technical differentiators that will set the St. John region apart. So again, that our sales team has something that other regions aren't going to have. So I'll use the example of in the hydrogen sector. Green methanol is a fuel of the future, likely for aviation, for ships and heavy transport. One thing that's unique to that is that St. John has for that sector is for it to be green, you need to have something called biogenic CO2, which is basically a green source of CO2, which sounds weird, but it's rare and it's something that we have a lot of in St. John. So that actually we put on our sheet so that if anyone who's interested in looking at doing green methanol production, they now know that, oh, St. John has this. And likely no one else will have that on their sheet. That's the level of detail that we want to be able to market, and the level of focus that we're trying to do in terms of marketing the region. Next slide. So this is kind of the last initiative I'll just touch on. It's we've been doing a lot of research post-tariff in terms of how things will change, but also what opportunities might exist. Could we explore potentially setting up, marketing ourselves as a hub for American businesses to do business with Europe? Are there going to be opportunities if more Ontario companies want to trade with Europe for them to want to set up some form of facilities here? We want to start trying to figure that out. And then what we're also going to do is we've contracted with the company to come up with some theories on this. And then we're going to start having them engage companies to test those theories and to generate leads for industrial projects in St. John, which we pass on to OMB in St. John Industrial. And the last one is the launch of the energy sector panel, which I've spoken to a little bit as well. So that's, generally the overview of the two services. Next slide. So maybe I'll just open it up for questions, and thank you for allowing us the chance to speak today.
Well, thanks very much, Jeff. That was an excellent presentation, packed full of a lot of information. Any questions, Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for being here, and thank you to your team for coming along as well. Wow, you guys have really jumped in your competency in 2 years. Like,
thank you.
Huge, huge jump. I'm really impressed, and I've been very outspoken on the other side of things when I wasn't so impressed in the early days. But this is great to see, and it's great to know that it's happening in the background, because oftentimes when I'm trying to track things in these broader conversation, the missing gap I always have is, okay, who really understands St. John's potential and can articulate it in a way when we're having national conversations about where to put things and why to build them in what places. This is fantastic. There is one question I have. I guess there's two. You talk about filling the gaps. We talk about even just the 2 letters of interest that were presented for Spruce Lake. 2 projects worth $1 billion each. Could bring in around 1,500 construction jobs between the 2 of them. Would bring in hundreds of other new jobs between the 2 of them. Let's just look at those. The gap I see that is glaring right now, and we just talked about it in the last meeting and close, and we were sort of talking about the overall picture here. In housing, it's workforce housing. What is your role in helping bridge that gap? If one of these triggers gets pulled on these 2 large projects, which qualify as mega projects according to the national sort of, as long as it's over $1 billion, I understand that that's when it qualifies as that. What's your role in helping companies or preparing companies for that housing piece? Because when you say the vacancy, well, somebody qualifies as having a healthy vacancy rate, I balk a little bit, because academically speaking, that should be around 6% from the sources I read, not 2, which continues to keep rent climbing and housing prices inflating. But there is, a lot of empty buildings. There's a lot of empty land. We've been advocating for a vacancy tax, vacant land or vacant buildings, try to push people into a direction, as well as incentives to carrot them into direction, because that's the barrel I think we're looking at, is if there's 400 new jobs and a bunch of construction temporary jobs, the hotels aren't going to handle it. There's not really any sort of dormitory style housing you can just throw up in a week or even 6 months to house people appropriately. But we have this tiered problem around there being opportunities to build, but no real way to get the province to act fast enough, or DTI to get off their butt and move it out the door. So I'm just wondering what your role in that is, or might be.
I would say our role in that is largely going to be as a convening body. So we don't have a lot of control. We don't have budgets. We don't have that sort of thing in vision. So what our role sometimes can be is helping to pull the partners together into one room to help start talking about strategy. I mean, $1 billion is a pretty massive project. Sometimes, depending on what's happening at the same time, St. John has been able to kind of manage its way through those types of things, like
Doing it with Next Gen right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The challenge that we're going to have to monitor is how many of these happen at once.
Right.
And that's where, as we start to get better insight into timeline, we may need to start pulling together people to have those conversations.
Okay.
Like there's been some projects that have come through the door and not progressed that have been larger than $1 billion.
Yeah.
And those ones we have started to have conversations around things like, well, are they going to need a workers' camp? There was work done previously when they were talking Second Refinery and Energy East about locating workers' camps and that sort of thing to facilitate massive projects. Can we dust that off? Is there anything reusable? But really, it's that would be a real team approach that would need to be taken by the city, by the province, by Envision. So, we would see ourselves as being part of the team and helping to convene them.
Okay.
Anybody?
Yeah, go ahead. My only other question was, is there anything you need from us? But I don't know.
Well, that was good.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Well, I think just engagement, support, understanding, I think council has a difficult job. You guys have to deal with the politics around projects coming forward. And so, continuing to being able to be a pro-growth council like that, I think is going to be important. And, what I would say as well is if you guys ever have any questions or anything comes up, feel welcome to send it our way.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. I mean, this was really good. And I think too, when you have mega projects, right? And you need to house workers coming in, you've got a real motivator to get that job done, right? To bring those partners together and find a solution for housing. So I think the bigger the project, the more motivation we have. And I think it's a good problem to have in a way. Anyway, thanks so much for coming in. I'd like to get a motion to receive for information. Barry and your worship on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item is 7. On to you, Chris. 7.1.
Thank you, Chair McKenzie. Next up is Kevin Molnar, Manager of Customer Service and Operations with the One Stop Development Shop. Kevin will walk us through the Growth at a Glance infographic and highlight positive development trends that are taking shape across our city.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Growth Committee. I'm pleased to provide with this month's Growth at a Glance report summarizing development activity from January through July of 2025. The first 7 months of 2025 represent the strongest start to a year we've ever recorded in St. John. And the value of construction of projects has reached $254.1 million, over 3 times our 5-year average of $77.9 million. Through this period, we received 439 building permits over the 5 years average of 421. 2 new schools have contributed significantly for this momentum. The first being the North End School, which is currently under construction for $46 million, and the South End School, which is currently under site prep for $55.4 million. These 2 schools together project for over $100 million in construction value. However, even excluding the 2 school projects, development activity for the year sits at $153 million. That's still the highest on record for the first 7 months of any year. This shows our growth is broad-based and diversified, not dependent on any one project or sector. This strong start is being driven by activity across all sectors: institutional, residential, commercial, and industrial. Confidence remains high, and we are seeing developers aggressively advancing new applications. While 2025 is already a record-breaking year, we've continued to see positive trends in residential unit counts. Year to date, we've seen the creation of 276 new residential units, above our 5-year average of 209. We're continuing to see large numbers of multi-unit residential buildings being constructed across the city. And we also have 16 additional developments in the pipeline, which together propose over 1,050 new residential units. Altogether, more than 450 residential units are either under construction or nearing completion citywide. The volume of activity suggests strong commitment from St. John from both public and private sectors. The period from January through July has not only been record-setting, but is also only the beginning of what we expect to be a milestone year for development within the city. With several large projects still to be permitted, we expect this momentum to continue well into the final few months of 2025. I will now take any questions or comments from the committee.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Your worship.
Just a quick comment. when we looked at the permits received over 5 years, average 421, we're at 439. But when we look at the money over the same 5-year average, 77.9 million up to 254. So it's interesting that our permits are tracking at the same number, but the value of them has gone up so significantly. So that's great for St. John. So it's really nice to have that. We're going to get that posted right away on the Facebook page. Thank you.
The city is growing. Anybody else? Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Kevin. And take a motion to receive for information, please. On the question? Thank you very much. 7.2, Mr. McKeon.
Thank you, Chair McKenzie. Next up is Victoria Lord, the Housing Officer with Growth and Community Services. She joined us from Housing New Brunswick in June and is presently standing in for Housing Manager Andrew Reed while he's on leave. She will be giving an update on the Development Incentives Review and the ongoing cultivation of large-scale development incentives program. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you. Chairman and members of the Growth Committee, good afternoon. I'm again here to give you an update on the Development Incentives Review and the ongoing development of our large-scale building incentives program. For some background, the Urban Development Incentive Program was in place since 2016, and it's played an important role in stimulating housing in the Central Peninsula. But as the parcel review you witnessed in May highlighted for you, the program has supported many developments, but it's no longer enough to change the financial viability equation for developers. Over time, that program has saturated its applicant pool. Most of the viable projects in the existing boundary have already been pursued, and developers are telling us that they need different supports if they're going to move forward on large-scale developments in urban areas. Parcel's market sounding and feasibility test made this very clear to make projects viable and financeable. Especially in high-rise rental and challenging building sites, we need to increase the value of our grants. Right now, we're favoring a 10-year grant model with a 3-year review cycle. It's favored as both the best fit for the city and for developers. Compared with a single upfront payment or the 5-year grant, it provides steadier cash flow for us and ultimately more money for them. It's a win-win model. It's more sustainable for our reserves and better aligned with the long-term tax-based growth that these projects generate. We will continue to support sites with construction challenges such as remediation and expensive geological complications. Our goal is to ensure this new large-scale development incentives program not only exceeds the benefits of the Urban Development Incentives Program, but it's competitive with what's being offered by peer municipalities. We are also interested in addressing housing and affordability. We're building a scorecard that will favor funding stacks with substantial affordability components such as HMB products like AHRP and CMHC products like MLI Select. Ultimately, more units will at least in part stabilize the cost of housing, if not bring it down some. And I think this actually links back to what Councillor Harris was saying a minute ago about the need for housing if we get development. There will literally be more units for the people to come in and work. And in the long term, if we grow the tax base, this ultimately means the city can stabilize other forms of taxation, such as property taxes. And that in turn affects affordability for all members of the St. John community and not just those who are relevant to the housing projects being favored. We're looking at a tight densification zone, and hopefully that will increase walkability and ultimately produce affordable lifestyles for people too. To close, Urban Development Incentives Program isn't meeting the needs of developers or making their projects viable. And because developers don't use it, it's not growing the tax base. We were awarded $918,000 to top up the half funding to develop this program. We've received 2/3 of it. So completing the project is how we will secure the last third. We're working hard on writing the policy as we speak, and we are hoping to bring it back before you at Growth in November and to Council in December. Does anyone have any questions?
Excellent. Well, thank you. Dorian, any questions? Councilor Hara?
Yeah, thanks for this. It's a good start for sure. I guess a couple of questions. One, how do we see the dovetail of, maybe I'm not gonna ask this right, let me rephrase that, hold on. If we have a housing secretariat model that we're currently developing,
Yes.
who's gonna come in and attempt to quarterback an approach and a methodology that can be a little bit more universal for developers and that part of the community around housing, what would be their role in informing this before we get it too ingrained? I guess that'd be a one worry that I have, is that whatever review we're doing and whatever direction we start on is going to be a big ship that will be hard to move if it's a 10-year vision. So how might we see their role informing and being able to reform this as it might be needed?
We will have a 10-year review cycle, a 3-year review cycle.
Right.
So one way or another, we will all be back at the table every 3 years.
Okay.
There is also a pro forma that will be used throughout its life cycle to make sure it stays viable.
Okay. Second question, if that's okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
CMHC doesn't currently care if you're building less than 5 units.
Correct.
The city has a lot of options and a lot of opportunities around 4 units that may or may not qualify for ARHP, having been through that personal battle myself for over a year. But regardless, like, what is our position if CMHC isn't at the table? Does it limit or reduce? I guess that would be my worry in making them some sort of, preferred partner, is that it might deter some of those other builds.
For this program,
Yeah.
we are looking at large scale development, which is code for many, many stories.
Okay.
So in this case, CMHC is
almost guaranteed to be on board.
yes.
Okay. Gotcha. So we're not looking at some of those other half grant funds that are.
Reforming half grants, separate matter.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
All right. No other comments? Could I get a motion to receive for information? Barry and Councilor Darling on the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
Here.
Thank you, Jerry. Seconder? Your worship, on the